Greetings everyone. Thanks for coming and watching this show of this old man in Dubai known as Uncle K. Today my debate between ChatGPT and Gemini Notebook is starting now. So let's go. Here we are.
1. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Uncle K's YouTube forum. I'm your host, Uncle K, and I warmly welcome you to the Great AI Debate. In today's program, ChatGPT is the active producer and proposal writer. It will present a practical idea designed to address an important challenge faced by many families living in Dubai. The two speakers from Gemini Notebook will then debate the proposal. One speaker will examine its strengths, practicality, and possible benefits, while the other will challenge it by raising real-life difficulties, concerns, and alternative viewpoints. Today's question is this: how can people manage a household budget in Dubai without making life miserable? Let us begin. ChatGPT, please present your proposal. Thank you, Uncle K. My proposal is called the Dubai 5-Part Household Budget. Living in Dubai offers tremendous opportunities, but families also face substantial expenses. Rent, groceries, transport, school fees, utilities, medical costs, debt payments, and financial responsibilities toward relatives can quickly consume a household's income. A successful family budget should not be based on complicated calculations. It should be simple enough for everyone in the household to understand, and practical enough to follow every month. I propose dividing household income into 5 parts. Part 1. Essential commitments. This covers expenses that cannot easily be avoided, like rent, utilities, school fees, transport, insurance, and necessary debt payments. These should be set aside before any other spending begins. Part 2. Weekly living expenses. This includes groceries, fuel, and regular household supplies. Instead of spending freely all month, the family agrees on a weekly limit. This way, overspending becomes visible before the money runs out. Part 3. Savings and emergencies. Even a relatively small monthly amount can gradually build a safety net. This fund helps with medical needs, urgent repairs, or sudden income disruption. Savings should be treated as a regular commitment, not just whatever happens to be left. Part 4. Controlled enjoyment. A budget should not erase all pleasure from family life. So a reasonable amount is set aside for eating out, entertainment, and personal treats. But once that limit is reached, the family waits until the next budget period instead of borrowing from essentials. And Part 5, family responsibilities and future goals. This includes support for relatives, remittances, education plans, travel, and long-term purchases. These are important, but they need open planning so that generosity does not quietly create crisis at home. I also propose a short monthly family budget meeting. A calm review of what was spent, what was unnecessary, and what matters next month. The purpose is understanding, not blame. The core message is straightforward. Commit to essentials first, control weekly spending, protect savings, enjoy life within a limit, and plan responsibilities together. This approach will not solve every problem, but it can reduce confusion and help families act deliberately rather than react in panic. That is my proposal. I now hand the discussion to the two speakers from Gemini Notebook.
Welcome to the debate. So I want you to imagine handing an AI a mathematically perfect spreadsheet of your monthly income. It analyzes the numbers, categorizes your expenses, and basically spits out a flawlessly logical budget.
Right. A perfect little financial roadmap.
Exactly. But now imagine telling that same AI that, well, 70% of that money legally vanished yesterday. Just gone. In a single post-dated check you had to write a year in advance.
Yeah, which is a very real scenario here.
It is. And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We are exploring what happens when, Silicon Valley algorithms collide with the actual financial reality of the Middle East.
And specifically, we're asking a pretty crucial question. Can an AI-generated framework like ChatGPT's standard proposal for managing a household budget actually serve as a practical financial model for residents in Dubai? Or does it fundamentally fail to account for the unique economic mechanics of living in the emirate?
Right, and I will be arguing that ChatGPT's proposal, which centers on things like weekly spending limits, prioritized savings, controlled enjoyment and monthly family reviews is not just effective, but it's really a necessary cognitive blueprint, for financial discipline in one of the most highly engineered consumption environments on Earth.
Well, and my position is that this algorithmic proposal is frankly structurally inadequate for the vast majority of Dubai residents. We're going to dive into exactly why the AI's neat, Western-centric categories completely shatter when they're confronted with the actual cash flow mechanics of the emirate.
You're talking about the macro expenses, I assume.
Absolutely. We are talking about massive rent obligations paid up front, exorbitant school fees, mandatory remittances, and just the harsh reality of irregular income. I mean, for many households carrying debt with virtually no money left after bare essentials, this AI model isn't a helpful tool. It's an algorithmic fantasy that just fundamentally misreads the environment.
Okay, let's start by looking at what ChatGPT actually generates when you ask it for a budgeting framework. The AI actually leans heavily on proven behavioral economics.
Sure, the standard models.
Right. It usually outputs a variation of standard rules, but it implements them through very specific behavioral guardrails. And the most crucial of these is weekly limits.
Weekly limits, right.
Yeah, because in a city like Dubai, where you are constantly bombarded by consumption triggers, from luxury malls integrated into your daily commute to the ubiquitous weekend brunch culture, establishing a temporal boundary on spending is absolutely vital.
It forces a pause.
Exactly. It stops you from burning through your monthly liquidity in the first 14 days. Furthermore, the AI insists on, quote, controlled enjoyment to prevent lifestyle creep, which, as we both know, is the silent killer of wealth here.
Oh, absolutely. Lifestyle creep is huge.
Right, and it also treats savings as a non-negotiable pillar, paying yourself first. And finally, it mandates monthly family reviews. That is the core governance mechanism. It pulls financial management out of the shadows of ambient anxiety and turns it into an active, transparent system of control.
I hear you. But the problem is that this entire baseline assumes an elasticity in cash flow that simply does not exist for a massive portion of Dubai's population.
You don't think there's elasticity?
Not for most, no. You mentioned standard rules, and ChatGPT loves to cite things like the 50-30-20 rule. That assumes you can neatly allocate 50% of your income to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings.
Which is a standard benchmark.
It is, but it assumes your needs are paid out linearly over the month. And that fundamentally misunderstands the cash flow mechanics of Dubai. Here, the true threats to your budget are massive, inflexible structural costs.
The upfront nature of things.
Exactly. Because the local real estate market operates on annual post-dated checks, a resident doesn't just pay rent on the first of the month like they might in, London or New York. They are often handing over a single check for a year's housing up front.
Which, I agree, forces a very specific kind of financial maneuvering.
It does. It completely breaks the AI's assumption of monthly cash flow. Because landlords demand these lump sums, residents are frequently forced to take out personal bank loans just to cover the check.
Right, the rent loans.
Yeah, so mathematically, for many households, rent isn't a housing expense anymore. It becomes a debt servicing expense. The bank takes its equated monthly installment, the EMI, the literal second your salary hits the account.
It's automated.
Completely. Add in exorbitant school fees that are demanded up front per term, and a household might hand over 60 to 70% of their liquidity before the month even begins. So when you are operating in a zero elasticity environment where the money is structurally gone on day one, an AI telling you to set a weekly limit on your grocery shopping feels honestly entirely detached from reality.
Okay, but if you are suggesting that the scale of structural expenses renders behavioral guardrails entirely useless, I have to push back on that.
Go ahead.
Let's look at the mechanics of what happens when that 60 or 70% vanishes. If your ship's hull has a massive breach, say a giant rent payment that takes on water, you don't just throw up your hands and stop sealing the internal bulkheads.
True, but
The weekly limits are the bulkheads. They don't fix the massive hole in the hull, but they stop the remaining liquidity from flooding the entire ship and sinking you today. Doesn't microdiscipline protect whatever liquidity remains precisely because those large expenses are so devastating?
Well, that assumes the bulkheads actually hold water. The sequencing of cash flow in a debt-leveraged household makes those internal boundaries practically irrelevant.
How so?
Let's trace the actual journey of a dirham in a middle to low income expatriate household in Dubai. The salary hits the account. Immediately, the bank deducts the personal loan EMI for last year's rent. Then utilities and transportation are paid.
Right, the basics.
And we haven't even touched the remittance yet, which is a structural mandate for many workers here. So by the time we arrive at the AI's weekly limit portion of the budget, the checking account is effectively at zero.
It's completely depleted.
Yes, the household is forced to survive on credit cards just to buy basic groceries. So when ChatGPT outputs a neat little spreadsheet suggesting they isolate 15% of their income into a digital envelope for weekly discretionary spending, it just demonstrates a complete lack of contextual awareness regarding debt traps.
Because the money isn't there to isolate.
Exactly. It assumes a linear flow of capital that simply doesn't match the sequence of deductions happening in reality.
But see, if a household is surviving on credit cards for basic groceries, they are mathematically insolvent.
Yes, they are.
So no budgeting framework, whether it's generated by a supercomputer or a Nobel laureate in economics, can magically manufacture capital out of a mathematical deficit. We can't invalidate the AI's entire structural logic just because it cannot solve extreme insolvency.
But it's not extreme insolvency, it's the norm for many.
Even so, if we look closely at the underlying logic of the AI's output, it is highly adaptable. Take the concept of prioritized savings. Now, if you're listening to this and you have zero margin, the word saving sounds insulting.
It does. It sounds like a joke.
Right. But what if we adapt the mechanism? The AI's underlying logic is to sequester a portion of income for long-term financial health. If we theoretically reallocate that savings category to, say, aggressive debt reduction or deleveraging the credit card, the framework holds up perfectly.
You're just changing the labels.
Exactly. The mathematical habit of separating capital from consumption works, even if the label changes.
Well, deleveraging is certainly a form of negative saving, and applying the AI's logic there makes mathematical sense. I'll give you that. But let's look at the other category you championed earlier, which is controlled enjoyment.
The pressure valve.
Right. The AI proposes this to prevent lifestyle creep, operating under the assumption that the primary threat to the user is having too much fun at high-end restaurants. It assumes a middle-class, Western economic baseline where discretionary income is just a given right of the worker.
And you're arguing that for a vast segment of Dubai's workforce, there simply is no discretionary income.
None. Literally none. And the psychological pressure of this is immense. If you're listening to this and you've just remitted half your paycheck to support your parents, paid your rent loan, and you're calculating how to make 200 dirhams stretch for 2 weeks of groceries, you know exactly how alienating this feels.
It feels completely disconnected.
Yes. When an AI tells a family they should budget for controlled enjoyment, and they look at their bank account and see a negative balance, the budget doesn't empower them. It proves the tool doesn't understand their reality. It actually builds resentment against a very concept of financial planning.
I completely understand the gravity of that zero margin reality. I do. But a budget must breathe to survive. We have decades of behavioral economics proving that if you construct a financial model that is entirely punitive, where 100% of income goes to survival, debt, and obligations, with absolutely zero allocation for psychological relief, the human beings operating that model will inevitably rebel against it.
They burn out.
They burn out, and they experience budget fatigue, which usually results in catastrophic binge spending. The AI's inclusion of controlled enjoyment is not a luxury, it is a psychological pressure valve.
Even when the math is zero?
Especially then. Even if that enjoyment is just 50 dirhams a week for a car tea and a walk by the beach, formalizing it in the budget gives the individual permission to experience a moment of relief without guilt. The AI recognizes that humans are not machines. They require psychological sustenance to maintain long-term discipline.
It's an insightful point about human psychology, I'll admit. But I think you are missing a massive cultural nuance here. We have to look at the training data the AI relies on. ChatGPT budgets for the individual because its baseline assumes localized wealth.
Meaning the wealth stays where it's earned.
Right, it assumes that financial success and emotional well-being are centered around the nuclear family living in the same house. But the Dubai expat economy operates on a highly distributed family model that spans multiple borders.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, for many expatriates, psychological relief doesn't come from personal consumption like buying a tea or going to the movies. It comes from fulfilling their duty to their extended family in their home country.
So the AI's definition of enjoyment is culturally misaligned.
Completely. Remittances are not just a financial transfer. They are a moral obligation, a source of identity, and often the primary source of emotional fulfillment for the worker. They are literally acting as the GDP of their extended family.
That's a fascinating way to put it.
It's the reality. When the AI fails to recognize this distributed economic model, when it lumps remittances into like miscellaneous expenses or treats them as secondary to building an individual emergency fund, it shows a profound algorithmic bias. It fails because its foundational code cannot comprehend that wealth for this user is not localized.
That is a brilliant way to frame the friction between Western-centric code and distributed expatriate wealth. But if we accept that the margins are mathematically zeroed out by remittances and debt, and the AI's categories need severe cultural translation, the question shifts from how do we save to how do we cope without burning out?
Right, survival mechanics.
Exactly, which forces us to look at the AI's primary governance mechanism, the monthly family review. Regardless of whether the margin is wide or razor thin, the AI insists on formalized transparency.
Sitting down and looking at the numbers.
Yes, it forces the household to sit down, look at the math, and align their actions. In a transient city like Dubai, where people often hide their financial realities from their spouses out of shame or, out of a desire to project success, this mandated transparency is arguably the most powerful behavioral tool the AI offers.
Well, I look at the monthly review through a different lens, specifically when we factor in how money is actually earned here. Dubai has a massive population of freelancers, real estate brokers, and commission-based sales professionals.
True, a lot of variable income.
A ton of it. The friction here is that the AI is trying to impose a factory worker financial model onto a hunter-gatherer economic reality.
A hunter-gatherer economic reality, meaning you eat what you kill and sometimes you don't kill anything for months.
Exactly. If your income fluctuates wildly from, say, 5,000 dirhams one month to 40,000 the next, and zero the month after, a traditional monthly review of a static budget isn't a rational alignment of fixed numbers. It's a terrifying confrontation with volatility.
Because the baseline is constantly moving.
Right. The AI assumes a linear input of capital, which allows for linear planning. But when a hunter-gatherer sits down every 30 days to review a static factory worker budget, that budget is usually blown on day one. If you have a bad month, you fail the AI's metrics instantly just by covering your basic housing.
So you're saying the review is counterproductive?
I'm saying, what does the review accomplish then? It manufactures guilt. It points out a failure that was entirely outside the individual's control. Sitting down to constantly confirm you are mathematically underwater doesn't build transparency, it amplifies trauma.
But avoiding the math doesn't fix the deficit. If you have a bad month, ignoring the spreadsheet doesn't make the rent check bounce any softer. In fact, doesn't the reality of being a hunter-gatherer make a formalized monthly review more critical, not less?
How so? If the numbers are entirely unpredictable, what are you even reviewing?
You are reviewing the surplus. If you don't know what you are making next month, you must be absolutely rigorous about managing the surplus from a good month to cover the shortfall of a bad month.
Well, surplus management is definitely key.
Right. Think about the real estate broker who finally lands the massive commission. Without a formalized review process, human nature dictates that this sudden influx of capital feels like permanent wealth.
It feels like they finally made it.
Exactly. And it bleeds into lifestyle upgrades, a nicer car lease, a more expensive brunch habit. The monthly review is the curing process for the meat the hunter-gatherer brings home. It is where the family actively decides to lock away the 40,000 dirham commission to cover the upcoming school fees rather than letting it evaporate.
But that assumes they have the foresight to do that during the review.
Without that governance, irregular income inevitably leads to irregular consumption, which is absolutely fatal in a high-cost environment.
Look, I don't disagree that surplus management is critical for irregular income, but the AI doesn't frame the review as a strategic forecasting session for surplus. It frames it retroactively, looking backward at what was spent against a rigid set of envelopes.
It acts as an auditor.
Exactly. It asks, did you stay under your grocery limit, instead of asking, how many months of survival does this commission buy us? That's my core issue. The AI provides a blueprint for a house, but Dubai residents are trying to build a ship that can survive a storm. The fundamental architecture is wrong.
Okay, it's a compelling distinction between looking backward at limits versus looking forward at survival. As we evaluate this, I think it's pretty clear that taking a raw output from ChatGPT and applying it blindly to a Dubai household is a recipe for immense frustration.
It's guaranteed frustration.
Yeah, but I maintain that discarding the AI's underlying behavioral architecture entirely is a mistake. The cognitive discipline it tries to instill is sound. We just have to translate it. If a household can take the concept of weekly limits, but manually pull their massive structural costs, the rent, EMI, the school fees, out of the equation entirely, then applying micro-discipline to the true remaining liquidity could actually keep them afloat.
I can concede that if you actively modify the parameters, if you effectively rewrite the AI's assumptions, the behavioral guardrails might have value, but that requires the user to already possess the financial literacy the AI is supposed to be providing.
Which is a heavy lift for someone already in distress.
Exactly. A user has to know to reclassify their remittances as a non-negotiable primary essential, completely separating it from the AI's westernized concepts of savings or enjoyment. They have to know to pivot the monthly review from a retrospective guilt trip into a forward-looking cash flow forecast.
They have to be their own financial planner, essentially.
Right. The danger is in the illusion of authority. The AI presents its model with such mathematical confidence that a stressed, debt-leveraged household might actually believe they are failing, when in reality, it's the algorithm that has failed to understand their environment.
That is the ultimate tension we are left with. The raw computing power of an AI can generate a flawless mathematical model, but while a budget isn't just math, it is a reflection of your legal obligations, your cultural duties, and the specific economic environment you operate in.
It's deeply human.
It is. The AI can provide the behavioral boundaries, but it cannot provide the context. So as you look at your own household frameworks, it is worth asking, are you blindly trusting a pristine theoretical model, or are you adapting those tools to survive the realities of the ground you're actually standing on?
It's a question everyone has to answer for themselves.
Absolutely. We will leave that for you to decide.
Four, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. We have heard a practical proposal, and we have also heard different viewpoints in the spirit of healthy debate. The purpose of Uncle K's YouTube forum is not to give instructions, but to encourage thoughtful discussion, respectful listening, and the sharing of experiences within our community. If today's topic spoke to you, we invite you to share your own thoughts in the comments. Please keep them kind, constructive, and considerate. Until next time, take care and stay curious.